Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbeville. Soon after Dale Jackson entered the Army at age 18, he was shipped off to Omaha, Nebraska for Ordnance Repair School, learning how to fix military equipment and vehicles. Just 15 months after he entered the service, on 6 June 1944, he would find himself at another Omaha, Omaha Beach, part of the third wave at Normandy on D-Day. He recalls that historical event with amazing clarity because he was there, because he was wounded there, because he served there. He says that he was there when General Eisenhower addressed the paratroopers the day before the invasion, and indeed identifies himself in one of the war's most famous photographs. We'll see that picture a little later, but right now, please welcome Bryan's Dale R. Jackson to Veterans of the Valley. Dale, it's really an honor to have you here, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I want to go right to England, outside of Reading, England, at Bracknell, and that's where you received your training for what would be the invasion. Talk a little bit about the training that you had, what your job was going to be, and how much did you all really know of what lay ahead at that time?
Really, I thought us being in England, we would be, or even at Bracknell, we getting ready to do an invasion. I didn't know just where that would be at that time. Mm-hmm. But what we got training in was the repairing of trucks, motors, transmissions, rear end differentials, and sometimes some of them had front wheels just blowed off. And we had to redo those. Mm-hmm. and get other parts for them.
Right, right. And because I could imagine with the invasion, there were a lot of vehicles involved in that invasion. We're going to see a picture a little bit later on of a sort of a panoramic view of the beach.
Yes.
And exactly how many vehicles there were. So your job was very significant one to keep things going.
Yes, that's quite right. We wanted to be sure everything was just right so that we wouldn't have anything bogged down on the beachhead. That was what the commanders have already talked to us about in our shop.
Right. You were part of the third wave on
Yes,
D-Day.
yes.
Talk about what you can recall about where you were when the first and the second wave went in, what you saw, and sort of what your thoughts were. I know we're going back some 65 years now, but mm-hmm. what your thoughts were as you on the LST approached Omaha Beach.
We didn't know really what was going to happen exactly, but we had been trained that we had to go over the side on a net. In front of me, I remember I had a friend of mine that went between the barge and the net and the boat, and it crushed him, killing him. Mm-hmm. I lost my best friend that we pair off, in twos usually in these actions, and as a result, I had to pick another new friend. But after we got into that barge, my thoughts was, oh my goodness. And then shortly after that, they began shelling that place. Mm-hmm. And we sat in that barge, and that's where I lost my hearing.
Right. Talk about that. Because of the shelling, because of the sound, right?
Yes, that's right. The sound, and it was tremendous. It blew my ears. And I didn't hear very much thereafter for a long, long time.
Right.
But now I've got earpieces that helps me a great deal. If it wasn't for the Veterans Administration at Temple, mm-hmm. I wouldn't have been able to hear today like I do.
Right. When people today look at history and look at news clips or even see the movies that have been made, the Longest Day, and more recently the movie Saving Private Ryan, and we see it depicted the way that Hollywood depicted it. Mm-hmm. How do you depict it, having been there, the actuality of the invasion of Normandy Beach?
Well, I reason picturing it as I really seen it because I was there.
Right.
And when I had a friend of mine that, since I had been here in Texas a while, said something to me about it. Well, where was you? And I says, I was there on the spot.
Right.
And he backed off.
Indeed. I want to go ahead and go to some photographs right
Very
now
well.
that you've supplied us, and one that you didn't supply us, but I got off the internet. And let's go ahead right now and see the young soldier. There, if you can go ahead and look at that picture. Now, tell us about that picture. That's you and your mom and dad?
Yes, that's me squatting down in front of Mom and Dad. That's when I was at the post in Indianapolis, just on the north side, on the bypass out there. My father and mother came and met, because I was not to be left there very much longer. They were going to move me someplace for other training.
But that was the day you enlisted, I believe you told me, right?
Yeah, that was the very enlisted. That was the day I was enlisting.
Right.
I've said my piece as what I was to be and what I was to do and all of this. And
while we have your dad's picture up there, I want you to tell us. You had told me about what your dad told you after you were drafted into the Army.
oh yes, after I was drafted in the Army, my father come outside and he said, let's take a walk, son. And I says, what for, Dad? I want to talk to you a bit. So he put his arm over my shoulder and he said, son, I want you to be able to listen up while you're in the service. And he said, I want you then to do what you're told. It might save your life. And then thirdly, he said, you'd better follow suit all the way through in these three instances, because that's what may keep you alive.
Good words. Let's go on to, we got a couple of other young pictures. Was that after you came home, or is that before your service?
That was just after I came home.
Okay.
And by the way, I was a PFC then.
Right, right. See the stripe. Okay, let's go on to the next one. And there you are again, another.
That's me
another
again.
photograph.
I guess the folks wanted me alone at that time and point.
Right, right. Now this next photograph, I believe, now here we go. This is your brother Dick and your sister.
That's my brother Dick,
Right.
and he'd already been, and sister, and he had already been in the service and was home because he had to come home after being blowed out of a tank.
Right,
He was in a tank. He was in the Tank Corps of Patton.
right.
And he and his sergeant was blowed out of the top of that tank. And his men were killed. But he was coming home. He went through Paris, New York City, and then finally he got to come home. But when he went back to New York City to be in the hospital for another hitch almost.
I see. I think the next picture is you and him together. There you all are together. You're on the
they-
right on that picture, and he's on the
Yeah,
left.
Dick and me.
Yeah. Now this next photograph is one that I got off the internet. This is 6 June 1944, the invasion. And I picked this picture because it really depicts the amount of equipment. We've seen so many pictures of just the beach or depictions of the beach and the soldiers coming up the beach. But the amount of the equipment coming off of the LSTs and coming onto the beach, and this is the type of equipment that you were there to repair and to keep going, right?
That's correct.
Pretty fascinating picture. Now this photograph, I would imagine that everybody recognizes this picture. It's one of the most famous photographs from World War II. Talk about what you remember about this scene and the young man in the back that we've put a little indicator over his head. That's Dale Jackson. That's you. What do you recall about this and General Eisenhower coming and talking to the
I tell you,
the troops?
this told all of us that were there, I'm certain, that man had some passion and for his men that he was leading or commanding. And he when he spoke with us, he says, boys, you're going to be going in to a fire that actually you've never seen before. And he says, I want you to be watchful. You've been trained. Now be watchful and go through, and let's have us a great victory. And that's the way he put it.
I don't want people to think that we're not aware of history. Obviously, General Eisenhower was actually addressing there on the front line members of the 502nd paratroopers of the 101st Airborne, but your unit was there to back them up, to support them,
Yes.
and you found your way right there almost in the front row for his
That's right.
speech.
We was just behind them.
Right, right. And I believe that my internet tells me that was at a place called Greenham Commons Airfield, which was very near Bracknell where you
Yes,
trained.
yes.
An amazing picture, and there you are. The next picture is coming up on the beach, and while you can't be 100% certain, this is certainly a depiction of what you saw and where you were, and you believe that you're in this picture, and that if you are, that you're the soldier on the right.
Yes, yes.
Right. You obviously weren't posing for any pictures at that time, but
No.
while you can't be 100% certain, even if that's not you, this is certainly a good depiction of what you experienced, right?
Yes.
Incredible photographs, indeed. Okay, the landing at Normandy, at the beach. Talk about the landing and what you experienced sort of after the landing before you got to the back. And I know that, and you were wounded, really, soon
Yes.
after you landed. Tell us about that.
All right. After we landed, I was down below, and as we had sat in that barge, we were shelling, and it was deafening. And I got up on the shore. I was in a mud hole, and I slipped and fell, but that was because an enemy bullet had hit me in the hip on the right side. Mm-hmm. And of course, I didn't know the damage, but I was in a mud hole. And my sergeant just looked down on me and said, "Lieutenant, are you hit?" I said, "Yes, come and get me. I'm in a mud hole. Come and get me out of this mud hole." And you know, he ordered, he did, and he carried me up just like I was just a little tiny tot. I tell you, that sergeant was real big and heavy and strong, because he carried me to the top, put me in his Jeep, and told his driver to drive me to the mess unit
Right.
up on the plateau. And
Right.
and after that, all I remember of that is that that bullet was pulled out, but they told me they were not going to touch that hip, and told me then, don't let any doctor ever operate on that hip, because it's a bleeder, and you'll be on blood thinner, and have been on for some time, and you're gonna have a lot of trouble.
Right, right. Not only were you a mechanic to fix the vehicles, but you were a truck driver.
Yes.
And you said that you drove many a truck in combat.
Yes, I did, in combat and blackout times too. We had to draw no lights, no nothing. We was in blackout, totally blackout.
Right.
And we had to drive in some of these conditions, and then that sometimes it required us just creeping, and it was dangerous.
Right. Right.
And one of the times that we were hauling in some parts and supplies, why we were parked under a tree with them, and then we off to the side a ways in order that we might be able to have a 30-gallon can of hot water for some coffee. And we decided we'd have a meal, which would be none other than the box of special things that the government furnished with us.
Right, the delicious stuff, right?
Yeah, boy.
Right.
But we had all of that, and I don't know. while we was doing all of this, why we had a happening one time, and one of the times we were out like that,
Right.
we had a truck that was, we looked up and we just seen parts and arms and things they didn't want. What they was after was ammunition.
Right.
And they were Germans, and they were throwing everything else off. And I just told the boys, I said, the drivers, I said, let's get ready now. On three, you know what I mean. 1, 2, 3, switch. And we blowed those trucks and everybody that was on them off. We had, of course, then after that, we had to walk back.
Right.
And that's
right.
That's,
so to eliminate the enemy, you had
we
to
had
blow
to,
up so
we
that
had
they,
to eliminate them.
Right, right, so that they would not get the parts, get the equipment.
That's right.
And you walked back.
We walked back.
And when you got back, you were praised for your action, right?
Yes, we were. This is something that some of the men were concerned about. We're going to get into trouble because we just let it happen. I says, no, you just leave it to me. And I talked to the commander, and the commander said, what happened, Dale? I told him, and he said, well, that's to be expected in battle. And I praise you fellas for all of you. You didn't let them get those units.
Right. Another incident that was very significant in your service, you were talking about that, I guess you were a driver, and you had taken one of the lieutenants, Lieutenant Smith, to the officer club, and on your way home, talk about what happened and who you met up with.
This was at Wiesbaden,
Right.
Germany, and when we
You were a Jeep driver, right?
I was a driver, and I drove Lieutenant Smith in a Jeep to his officers club. Coming back, I looked up, and there was a bug. A bug is nothing but a VW. It had all of the windows in those bugs that was manufactured that day. They were a part of the cow part, and they were looking over the front glass, and they were firing at me. I grabbed my Jeep wheel and sped a little bit, turned it over on the curb, made a fort out of it. When they passed, I took them out.
With a submachine gun?
Submachine gun. I had a submachine gun. I grabbed it as I jumped out of it, and then come back real quick like, and I took those 3 suckers out. And they laid on the thing. It wasn't but just a few minutes after that the MPs were on us.
Right.
Every one of them. And so he said, don't say your names, don't say your name, don't say your unit, don't worry about your Jeep. We'll get it back to the compound. You get in the middle Jeep. We'll guard you till we get you back to your compound. And that's the way it went. And I got in there, we got over there and we walked into the CQ quarters, and just as soon as I got in there, he said, now Jackson, what in the world was you doing? What have you done wrong? That's his only answer he ever made when he thought he could get at somebody. He said, what have you been doing wrong? What happened? And so about that time, the young major said, "Attention!" You ought to see that old goat jump to stiff like a board. And over in the corner, I had a friend of mine, was a buck sergeant. He was grinning like a cat eating a dish of fish or something. But anyhow, he dropped the grin, and we've had that as a good laugh for a lot of times. But
right.
I tell you,
And what did the major say?
Pardon?
What did the major say?
And the major told him, he says, Sergeant Major, I want to tell you something. This man, I just got him out of a lot of problems too, but I'm not going to charge him with that at all. And you're not going to do it either, because I'm going to say unto you right now, 400 hours in the morning, I want that man headed stateside. And if he isn't, your backside's going to belong to me.
Because these were enemy that they'd been after for a while. Is that
Yes,
right?
yes, they'd been chasing them for 3 or 4 weeks, I guess, and they kept evading them.
Right.
We didn't let them evade us.
So you came home.
Yeah. I was next morning on 0400 hours. I was on a truck headed out. I was in the back end of it, and
Right.
boy, that was a rough ride. But finally, it was shifted over to a weapons, not a weapons carrier, but a command car.
Right.
And we began to come into Le Havre, France. That's a port of debarkation.
You came home from your service, and in the time that we have left, I want to talk about sort of your career after the service. You're a minister.
Yes.
Talk about that and how that came to be. And
Well, I was in a church. I believe it was the Church of the Nazarene, and I wanted to go to school, and so we went up to one of their colleges for some training in the essence of preparedness of a minister. Now, I had finished all but 2 years of my high school, but what I did, I took 2 years, along with my college work, I took high school and got a diploma
I see.
from a high school. And then when I ended there, I got a diploma from that college. And then I went to another university, and after a while, we finally were going into this was in Indianapolis, and then I went to Christian Theological Seminary for a year and a half after 4 years in that university. And then when my son, one of my sons, wanted to go to college, he come to me and my friend and wanted to know if we could get him down to the Asbury College. He said, I've heard a lot about that, I want to go there. And so my friend Luther and I said, well, that's a good school. So what we did, we took him down there.
Right.
And he said to me, Dad, why in the world don't you just get into the seminary over there, and then you can come and room with me? I had to pay for, Mom and I had to pay for the room anyway.
Right.
And so I stayed, I lived with him all the time he was there, and went to the seminary.
Right. How did your World War II service and what you had seen in World War II, how do you think that helped you? How did that serve you in your ministry later on?
Well, I'll tell you, that served well. I, at 14 years of age, was called to the preaching ministry. I had never forgot about it. Then after I became 15 years of age, some of the colleagues that had me in that youth camp wanted me to speak for them in their churches. I spoke. I gave evangelistic services up and down, up until I was 18, and then went into the service.
Right.
But these are some of the things that actually made me have the spirit that Christ has come to forgive us and to help us as we walk and live our lives, and we've continued on until it was finished.
Actually, you said that your mom knew you were going to be a preacher early on, right?
Yes, I forgot about that a little bit here, but that's right. Anytime any one of the ladies or family or anyone come in, when I was a small lad, Mom was holding me on her lap, and she says, "This is my preacher lad."
Right.
So that was put in my mind pretty badly.
So she knew early on.
Oh yeah, I think mothers and daddies and all other individuals that know us real well know what's going on.
Indeed. And as a matter of fact, I believe that you have been the chaplain of the VFW here locally.
Yes,
is that right?
I've been for 7 years now. I've been a chaplain with the VFW. It gives me something to do and a night out, and
Right.
I enjoy the fellowship.
Indeed, indeed. Talk about we have just a couple of minutes left. Talk about your family, and I know that your wife is you and your wife live in Bryan.
Yes.
And you have children. Talk just who they are and talk about your family.
Beg your pardon?
And how long you've been married.
Well, Betty and I have been married. It will be this coming October 26th. We will be married, I believe it's going to be something like about 52 years.
Okay. Okay.
And I'll tell you, Betty and I have been married those years, all those years, and these two sons has been around us and with us. One of them has been with us mostly all the time.
Right.
But the other boy had been in the service. He finally came home, but his commanding officer called one day and said, "I wonder, Mr. Jackson, if you can send your son right directly home." And I says, "Why, yes, he'll have a home for us." "Well, all right, he's on his way." So he put him on a bus and shipped him down to Texas. But that was homecoming.
Indeed. Your story is indeed a remarkable one. It is one, and I know that it's a service that you're very proud of.
Yes, I am.
And we're very proud of your service.
Yes.
And thank you for telling it here on Veterans
Well,
of
I
the Valley.
appreciate doing this, and I appreciate you asking me to do it.
It is an honor. Among World War II's most unforgettable images are the landings at Normandy, at beaches called Utah, Gold, Juneau, Sword, and Omaha. 6 June 1944 is a day that Dale Jackson will never forget, and we pray that history will never allow our children or their children to forget either. We salute Dale Jackson for his service. I'm Tom Turbeville. Join us next time on Veterans of the Valley.